Okay, so I'm not going to go over one of the other classes. I had all new students that I hadn't had before, and most of the other students in this class were in that class. So I'm not going to go over an introduction for me because I did that already for everybody, and Lori already knows me, who I am. So we'll kind of just start with class stuff here. And so I'm in the course shell here of my SBC, and I think you guys kind of know that a little bit. Went through it quite extensively with my other classes. So it's the same setup as I have for all my classes, as I kind of usually do that. But we're going to go through the syllabus first, and then we'll pop through some of these other pieces here in my SBC. Let me pull this up so hopefully everybody can see it. Okay, so this is 252 stages of child development. It's a 3-credit-hour class, so we're meeting as a hybrid with this class, right? So 1 hour a week, either in person or on Zoom. And for those of you who can't make it, you're hopefully watching the recording, because if not, you're missing out on a lot of information. But you watch the recording. So we have an hour of class time. And then after that, there's going to be at least 2 hours, hopefully. Some days or some weeks it may not quite look like that, but 2 hours of work outside of the classroom approximately with that. So is how we kind of have to set that up. So you can see my office hours here. I'm going to try something here. Annotate. You can see my office hours here, hopefully. And if those days and times do not work for you, of course, just let me know, and we can meet pretty much anytime that works for both of us. So my office, my cell phone, my email address is there. If you call my office and leave a message, it comes to my email, which comes to my phone also. So I will be able to get it even if I'm not in my office. So call, text, send an email. If I'm available, I'll answer. Okay, we're meeting here, of course, Wednesdays, 10 to 10:55, either in classroom or through Zoom. Either option is fine with me. I have the right book for this class, Early Childhood Development. If you got this one, Multicultural Perspective. We'll talk about that. There's 18 chapters in there. We're not gonna. There's one chapter I'm leaving out, and a couple that are short that we might cover at once, like we probably will today. Yeah, that is the book. It's Multicultural Perspective. So whoops. There we go. So we'll look at a variety of perspectives in early childhood and the development of kids, and not just look at like the Western world type thing. We'll see that as we jump into the first chapter here right away. It talks about a variety of perspectives from different families and students and stuff. So what is this class about? We're looking at the emotional, social, physical, cognitive, language development of infants, toddlers, preschools, and looking at diverse backgrounds of these students, of these children, I guess. And hopefully we'll provide you a hands-on guide for you as either teachers, caregivers, providers, whatever type of role that you might take on as you exit our program, because you have a variety of options. You know, it could be a teacher, you could be, you know, work at a preschool, you could work at Head Start, you could start your own daycare. There's just a whole bunch of things that you could potentially work at. So let's see. Also looking at a typical environment or typical development, also atypical development, meaning something that's not considered normal, what that development also looks like as well. So course outcomes. So what we want you to hopefully take away from this after you are done with this class. So we are looking at, give me a second here. I can stop saying. Course is designed to provide a concise review of developmental principles. So basically like social development, emotional development, what that looks like. So you know there's going to be some theories in there that we probably just covered in other classes as well. We're going to cover that again. Provide easily accessible information about what to expect at each developmental level. Okay, so what things kind of look like, what maybe milestones children might have, what they should be doing at different developmental levels. Suggest appropriate ways for parents and caregivers to facilitate learning and development during the early years. Okay? So early years can, mean 0 all the way up to, 5 or 6, and even maybe 7, 6, 7, and 8 as well. But we're going to cover all those ages. Looking or pinpointing at warning signs of a possible development problem and how to suggest where to get help and how to get help for families, right? Because sometimes that might be difficult. You might be working in a setting with the children and you notice something and maybe the parents haven't picked up on it or noticed. How do you tell them that you think their child has a learning disability or a social, emotional, issue? So we'll help you hopefully get through that process. Emphasize values of direct observation of children and all early childhood education types of programs. So direct observation, what does that look like? How are you going to do that in different early childhood settings? And the last one, describe cultural and racial diversity in terms of its impact on the development process. So is there, and look at it and see if there is. So, growing up in different parts of the country, is there going to be some impact, whether negative or positive, on social emotional development? Different types of people, different cultures, different ethnicities, different socioeconomic backgrounds. So we'll take a look at those. Okay, so there's 6 of them, hopefully that we can get covered, or that we will, and hopefully that you will remember. So there's program outcomes, institutional outcomes, and general education essential learning outcomes. We have to include these in here as well because we kind of take a look at them. It's not something necessarily that we test you on, but we take a look at them for ourselves in terms of our programs and such. So basically, we're hoping that you become and grow in like creative thinking, problem solving, right? Being an effective writer, effective communicator, learning about a variety of global cultures, different cultures, those types of things. Okay. If you have questions about those, make sure you just ask me and let me know. Cultural relevancy activities. So educational philosophy incorporates Lakota, Dakota language, history, and culture into this course, hopefully, especially as we're looking at through a multicultural perspective with our book. We're going to work on integrating, if we do some lessons, we're going to do some lessons and incorporate culturally relevant background information, not necessarily just like maybe Native American cultures and backgrounds, but what are some different perspectives or backgrounds that we might come across in different places of the state, right? Or even in our area, because we're all not just non-Native and Native students and people in our areas. There's a variety of backgrounds. So, but really focusing on using like Lakota values and language, history, and culture as well. So technology components. Of course, all MySBC, all the assignments need to be uploaded to MySBC, and quizzes and tests and stuff that you'll do will be on there. So you'll need a computer to use for that, obviously. You'll be able to use Zoom. We will be doing presentations. We'll be doing some videos, maybe doing a little bit of research. So there's all kinds of technology that we'll use for this class. Attendance policy. So this is a hybrid class, so to be counted for attendance, multiple ways that you can do that. So you're here in class or you're here on Zoom when we have class, you'll be counted present. If you can't make it, you have to engage online on MySBC, right? So there will be assignments every week to do. So for example, if there's a quiz that week, you're not here and you do the quiz and you're counted as present, or other activity. Or if you engage with me somehow, email, phone call, something, that, I'm sick or I can't do this or I'm gone or something like that, that's another way to be counted present as well, as long as you're connecting and communicating with me. We also have put in here in terms of our COVID attendance and concerns with those. It's not constantly changing, but we definitely have a rise in cases around the area now. So things could be shifting and changing in terms of, if you're not feeling well, definitely don't come to campus, but with our class, if you're feeling all of my classes and the education classes, if you're feeling well enough to hop on Zoom, you should probably have that option so you can connect into class if you want to and are feeling good enough to do that. So, but in the syllabi, there's a statement. If you click on this link, it'll take you to the most recent policy and updates on COVID attendance and stuff with City Wall College. If you have questions on that, definitely please let me know. Portfolio project, I talked a little bit about this in my other classes, but those that have taken classes with me before know that at the end of your associates and the bachelor's, you have to prepare a portfolio to present to us in the teacher ed program. Within that portfolio, you do things like put a resume together, you do a diversity statement in terms of like what you've learned about diversity here at the college, but then you also include best practices. Like for your associates, there's 4 best practices that you include. So as all the classes that you've taken, what are 4 things that stick out to you? Like, this was a great assignment, I'm going to use this in when I'm a teacher, or I really liked this to write this paper because I learned more about myself, or something like that. It doesn't have to be just in education classes, it can be in any of the classes that you took. So for those of you that are close to graduating, we'll work with you on that and get you that that information, because we have an outline of like, this is what you put here and here and here and here. So canceling class, hopefully I won't have to do that, but if I know far enough ahead of time that I have to cancel, I will of course let you know. And if it's something where I am sick or I can't be here on a Wednesday, we'll use the alert system. So as well as I will email you all as well. So if you haven't signed up for the alert system, make sure you do that through my SBC. If you need help with that, let me know and I can get you signed up for it, because you can get a text message, an email, and a phone call all at the same time. So kind of like, I don't know if you all watched The Office, but I watched a episode last night where they did the WOOF system, where they get a fax, an email, a phone call, a message, text message all at the same time when you send out. Anyway, not pertinent. I shouldn't have talked. So teaching methods, we'll do some lecture in class. I also might do some things where, depending on if how many people are here in class or through Zoom, I might record a lecture on a chapter, and then we might do an activity in class together and just kind of flip that so that you'd be responsible for watching that video of the lecture stuff or the chapters. And then we might do an activity or something different in class. So it just depends on how things shape up for the semester. But anyway, these are some of the evaluation measures or assignments that we will probably do. So presentation, discussion paper, tests, other assignments. These are approximate percentages. They shift depending on how things go in class, what you guys want to know, or whether we adjust things or not. So the grading scale is the same as it always is for all of our classes. And then of course, this is a tentative outline of courses and topics for the semester. So I don't have all of the assignments in here on the syllabus, so I have you guys refer to my SBC on that. So there's only 1 week where we won't have class. That's spring break week. That is the week of March 16th. Since we're in the middle of the week, there's typically in the middle of the week. So we'll have it every week unless I'm gone. So hey, if you are a student that has a disability, either physical, emotional, medical, learning disability, that's going to impact your ability to learn or come to class or something like that. If you need help kind of navigating that, Derek Stewart is our disabilities coordinator, so you can connect with him. He's got some paperwork for you that you could work on or fill out, and then he can work with the instructors on helping them with resources or just some strategies that depending on what their student's disability is to help them through that. So if you need to contact him, like I said, 854-8034 is his phone number. Shoot him an email, stop by and visit with him. So, and that is that. Questions, Lori? We're going to actually go over chapters 1 and 2 this week a little bit here in class. So just because there's so many chapters in the book. I'm like, I'm gonna have to get started on this a little bit right away. So we'll touch on as much of that as we can get through today. They're not very long chapters, like maybe 20-ish pages, somewhere around there. So it's not real long, but okay. So we're in my SBC here now that you can see, and I clicked on the syllabus link over here on the left-hand side. So if you will remember from previous classes, if you had them with me, or from the first class that you guys had with me this week, several areas that I use: coursework, resources, discussion forum, okay, are the three big ones. Of course, the syllabus is here for you to take a look at. And so I'll review each of these a little bit here before we jump into course one, to chapter one. And the Zoom link, if you want to connect with me through Zoom, is right here in the class deal. So you just got to click on that and then click on that Zoom link right there, and it should connect you with me. Also, for like office hours, if I'm up here in my office, I'm going to try to remember to open my Zoom link. And if you want to connect in through Zoom and talk about something, then we can do it that way. You can also call me and stuff too. But I'm going to try to do Thursdays as like online office hours type deal. And I might be in Mulbridge more that day, or all day. Not necessarily at the site, but so if you need something specifically in Mulbridge where you want to meet, Thursdays is going to be the day I'm going to try to hang out there. Maybe at home, but not at not at the site. Okay, so so in coursework, okay, right now this is the first time I've taught this class, so it takes me a little bit more to get things like set up, right? So I've gotten through the first 5 quizzes, and I haven't added some of the assignments I want to add yet. I still got them kind of here on whatever, like my lesson plan stuff. So I haven't got everything added in there yet. So it just shows the first 5 quizzes. Okay. If I go back to the regular view, which is my view, you guys don't quite see it like this, but I've got all of the quizzes in there right now. Some of them I still have to add questions and stuff like that. But I will also add in those assignments as we get kind of moving forward here. And I will definitely let you know enough ahead of time, 2 weeks, 3 weeks or more, that there's a new assignment in there coming up, and you should be able to see them as they pop up too. So I'm going to change this back to student 1 here. Okay, so the other thing that I do, and Lori, I think you know this, is quiz stuff that I allow you guys to use your book, your PowerPoints, or any notes that you may take while we're in class to use during your quiz. So I'm really doing these quizzes for this class and this semester more, not necessarily as a test or quiz, like you need to have this memorized, you need to, it's more of a gauge that you're either looking through the chapter, reading through the chapter, and understanding the information rather than a typical quiz. Okay, so there's more questions on these quizzes than there has been in some of my previous ones. So just to pull these up and to make you aware. So there's 20 questions on here. I mean, not a ton of questions, right? But worth like 36 points. So there's more multiple choice components in here than I typically use. I like to do essay ones for those of you that are not aware, just because it gets me to a sense of what you're thinking, right? And sometimes when I took multiple choice tests, was able to sometimes guess, if I didn't know the answer, I could eliminate some stuff and then figure it out. So, but if you don't know the answer for something, definitely take the time, go back, look at it, see if you can figure it out. I also have some essay questions in here as well that are a little bit more, of course, takes a little bit more to answer them. Okay, but it's probably gonna, I don't want to say it's gonna take you an hour to do it, but it might take you a little bit longer than what some of my tests in the past have been. So if you don't know any different, then forget what I said, but Lori's had me for a couple of classes, so she probably knows, we do sometimes more in class, and then the quizzes and stuff are a little shorter. But as you know, you can start the test. If you have to leave or don't want to finish it all at once, you can save the progress, exit the exam, and it should work. Sometimes it doesn't, right? We've come across those technical difficulties. So if you're taking the quiz and something comes in, it gets submitted by mistake, or you hit the wrong button, let me know. I'll reopen it for you. So not the end of the world. Okay, so all your coursework and information is right there, and those will be becoming more populated, and hopefully by the end of the month, I'll have everything in there and uploaded and ready to go, so you can see it all, kind of plan it out for the class. Of course, then under resources, the other tab that we use, or that I use quite a bit right now, I have all the PowerPoints in there. So as we go through the class, and maybe I have an article, or maybe there's a video I use or share, it will all be put in here under the resources tab. And of course, all the videos that I record of in-class stuff will go here as well. I always email it out to everybody, also just to have that, so it's in multiple places for you to have. But right now, I just have the PowerPoints in here. Okay. Also, the other thing that we'll use from time to time, not necessarily every week, is the discussion forum. So maybe there's some questions that I want you to answer, or some scenarios that I have you look at, and you type in your answer or your response to that here in the discussion forum. Right now, I don't have anything in there. We're not going to do any discussion stuff for the first couple of weeks. We'll see how the class kind of gets started and shifts. And so if it's more of an online component where there's only one, where you're the only one here, then I'm going to have more discussion forum components for other people to do. So right now, I'm not going to require you guys to respond to somebody else in the discussion forum. We'll see how it goes. But when I put something in there, you'll make a post, you'll respond to that question. You'll read everybody else's, hopefully. If you want to respond to them, you have something that you want to share with them, or you like what they say, then you definitely can do that. It's not that you don't have to, you sure can if you want to. Okay, coursework, resources, discussion forum. Your syllabus is there. Any questions with any of those, Lori? Okay. So those are the four big pieces. Okay. Okay, so if you'll notice, because there are a lot of chapters in this book, I have us kind of going through the first two chapters a little bit today. Now there's like 20 minutes of class left. The chapters are not very long, and they're really generic-y kind of. I mean, stuff maybe that maybe you guys have talked about before, or maybe know about already. And so I've got chapters 1 and 2 that we're going to touch on today a little bit. Okay. You'll also notice, I should probably point out, all the assignments will be due on Wednesdays. Okay, right? So Lori knows this, but so like I'm going to talk about chapters 1 and 2 today. So you have the following week till next Wednesday at midnight to complete those quizzes. Okay, so we'll come back and touch base again next Wednesday, the 19th. And I'll remind you that you still have time to finish that quiz if you haven't done that. So if you like to do things in the weekend, you have the time to do that on the weekend. Monday's a holiday, all right? So no classes on Monday. But if these are more for the students watching the video rather than, the process of that. So, but yeah, so whatever day we have class here, which is Wednesday, you'll have a whole full day to complete that. Okay. So I'm going to minimize this, and I'm going to pull up this here. So if you got questions while we're going through it, just holler at me and let me know, and I will stop. But I'll probably go through pretty quick to kind of shrink it in. But not some okay information. You'll probably also notice one thing: we're not going to go over chapter 4. That's something that, and I can't remember what the chapter is off the top of my head, that I thought that we could leave out. What was it? Oh yeah, yep. I think the reason why I went through that is because maybe I was not quite comfortable talking about some of that stuff in that chapter, and that you guys probably knew that already. So I think that was part of the reason why I left that out. But if you guys want to cover it, let me know and we'll add that in there. So, but because there was so many chapters in here, I thought, there's got to be some stuff that I probably don't need to cover and touch base on. So, okay, that was. Okay, so like I said, this is talks about a multicultural perspective here for early childhood. Okay, so it's going to give us a different view than maybe some regular textbooks of like so many times, the Western world, or just the way that things are done, maybe in big cities, and different stuff. So hopefully this will provide us with a different perspective in terms of early childhood and development for kids, right? So two things that they talk about in this book I noticed, and that they will continue to talk about throughout the book, is quantitative and qualitative growth. Okay, so typically from my understanding, or not understanding, but the use of those terms is something that, can I move this? Anyway, something that I connect with like research. Okay, so in terms of the definition of quantitative work with research, that's about numbers, statistics, type of thing. Whereas qualitative is really about feelings and how somebody interprets things or their emotions towards that. So here we're talking kind of similar, right? So quantitative information in terms of human growth and development is about more things. Okay, so how much does somebody weigh? How long is somebody, right? So again, kind of talking about that that number of things. Okay, also could be talking about having more memories. Okay, I remember 5 things from when I was 3. If you can't, I can't, but if you can, that's great. I don't remember anything about when I was a young kid. So quantitative is talking about acquiring more numbers. Okay, qualitative is more abstract reasoning, okay, instead of just concrete. Okay, so helping students to understand their emotions, their social development, their emotional development, that fits into that qualitative piece of that. So as we go through this semester, in the book, you're going to see those terms. Okay, and so if you have questions about what those terms mean or the understanding of that, let me know, because I probably won't. I don't use that quantitative, qualitative, those words as much as the book probably does. So if there's some confusion when you're going through the book and doing some reading and understanding, let me know with that. I tried not to include those very much in like the quizzes and stuff like that. So it talks a little bit about Western views on early childhood development and their changing, or their ideas, the change over the years. So if you've taken a class, I know in other classes we've talked about historical development of like education and also early childhood education and what that looked like from like colony days all the way through, now. There's a lot of changes in that. But if we look historically at early childhood, there typically there has tried to be an inclusion of underrepresented groups, right? And sometimes not an inclusion of those in the right way. So we can talk about like the boarding school era, right? Is an inclusion of underrepresented groups, but not a very good way to include them by just taking them and sending them to boarding school, type thing. So there has been some inclusion, but it has not been very good. It's led to a lot of hardships, like it says here, which have led to some bonds between a stronger maybe kinship bond of families in different cultures. So it talks about Native American and African culture being one, for example, taking countries taking African people from Africa and bringing them as slaves, to our country, to lots of countries. And so that is obviously a hardship that probably created some strong bonds within those communities and with those cultures. Also, challenges to survival have led to collective child rearing. What does collective child rearing mean? A family, a larger group. Okay? We talk about like Sitting Bulls, maybe it takes a community to raise a child. That's not necessarily Sitting Bull, but let's put our minds together as a community to see what we can do for our children. So helping hardships and challenges lead to that group, that community dynamic of helping to raise children. So again, talking about slavery and colonialism, affecting parenting and the value placed on Western education. So obviously very different in terms of like Western view when we start talking about like what schooling should look like, you know, what early childhood should look like. There's definitely that firm directive parenting. You need to do this, you need to do this, this is how you do it, you know, just teach, do. Whereas some of our other like minority or underrepresented cultures are more of a non-directive approach, right? Allow the child to experience it, let them try to figure it out themselves, and then we interject. If make a mistake or do something, then we interject. So there's some different types of parenting and child rearing that definitely goes on, you know, today. As the Western, as the United States tried to expand, you know, they tried to force that on a lot of the cultures, right? We kind of know that, I think. So religion played a large role in those expectations of education and also of parenting as well. So and there's still some of that today, right? There's still a lot of religious influence on a lot of people, which is fine. You know, if people want to do things a certain way, that's fine, but that's not necessarily for everyone. So we talk a little bit about, or they talk about what things look like through the Middle Ages, the 1700, also the Renaissance view. So they used to talk about like birth to age 7, infants who are non-persons, basically meaning that okay, they're I don't know, not babies, but they're infants. They don't really know the things that are going on. They're not learning. They're not understanding. And then after age 7, they believed that they're adults now, or they're little adults. They should be expected to act like adults. So very interesting to look back and think of what, you know, what people thought should happen without really understanding and knowing growth and development and what takes place. So yeah. So in the Renaissance period, though, children are seen very different from adults, okay, which is good. They also thought that as babies, when babies were born, they were bad. And they need to have the devil beat out of them. So different things like, I don't know, spankings, or not necessarily torture, but just some of those different components. So especially if children were like misbehaving, or, you know, they did not follow orders or parents' rules, and there was more of those, that was the devil in them. And so that's not everybody that believed that, but during this Renaissance period is kind of what the thought was during that time. So I am glad we did not live during those times. So, and if you think of the Renaissance period, that was more Europe Renaissance type stuff, not necessarily here in North America. So, of course, other Western perspectives during these time periods here, right? 1800, 1900, 1900, 1950, 1950, 2000. So in US and Europe, we're looking at socialization, like training of like children, like more like focused schooling rather than like learning stuff within their families, right, at home. 1900 to 1950, looking at childcare protection, especially as we start. These times are connected to like a lot of wars, right? World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korea. I mean, a lot of those things going on. So there was a lot of things shifting and changing. More people working. So we're looking at childcare for those people working, and also protection. And then kind of shifting from 1950s to 2000, looking at providing services, helping in terms of like, I guess I'm not 100% sure if like child protective services started then, but not necessarily those services, but like how can we help families who need childcare, or how can we help families who want to send their kids to preschool but can't afford to do that? What can we do with all these different families who want to do things but need help with that? So looking at it that way. So yeah. So in terms of early childhood development, why do we want to study that? Okay, why is that important that we understand as teachers and people that work with children, why it's important to know development? Okay, so we're going to interact with kids, right? So we need to know what's appropriate. I'll talk a lot about developmentally appropriate practices and knowing what that is. So it's important that we know that. Okay, planning curriculum goes along with that in terms of developmentally appropriate, right? We need to know what's appropriate to teach a child at a certain age or at a certain developmental level. To be able to observe and identify children with special needs and either provide the help that they need or the modifications, or else refer them to an agency or somebody that can help them with their special needs. Right? Understanding diversity, appreciating diversity, knowing how to incorporate differentiation in our classrooms, right? When we're working with students that might be from different backgrounds. And then advocating is important. So we talk about advocating, meaning that not necessarily that we go to meetings and demand this and demand that, but we help to shape policy in terms of like speaking up, or writing a letter or an email or talking about something that we think needs to be changed, whether it's something in a classroom, whether it's something, a policy at a state level, a local level, a national level. It's a good time, I think, to be in early childhood. There's a lot of talk right now across like national talk about more funding for early childhood education. What does that look like? I don't know right now, but they're talking about preschool for all children, and so with that would mean more opportunities for teachers, maybe increase in pay. There's a lot of things that that could fall within that. So we're talking about looking at it at a multicultural perspective and what that might look like. Children of traditionally underrepresented groups will soon be the majority in the United States. So if you look at one of the last national, probably from the census this last time, looked at the population of the United States. And so like the white population was not the majority. There was not 50% of the country was white, right? So there's a shift in terms of the demographics, right? So there's a large diversity in the country. So I think that is kind of what that means. So there's not really a majority in the country anymore. Okay? Children of different cultures vary in the way they communicate and interact, and children of color are often underrepresented or misrepresented in child development research. Okay, so a couple things to think of there. So when we're talking about stuff like statistics say that that doesn't necessarily mean we have included all groups of people in that statistics, and so that's one thing I often think about too, and I'm sometimes hesitant to talk about things that say, well, research says that because a student lives in this area that they're going to be at risk or something like that. That doesn't include all students all the time, so we have to be careful of that. So I don't think I need to define these terms here for you guys. I think you're smart enough to figure those out, but there is some definition of certain terms that we use or that they use in the book. Special needs, cultural, ethnic diversity, socioeconomic status, and those types of things. So questions, Lori, so far on this chapter? Okay, that's it kind of in a nutshell. Like I said, it's not super long, but just some kind of little bit of background on some perspective components there. So, okay, I got a few minutes here. I'll try to get pop into this second chapter here. Okay, so this one talks a little bit about research and assessment in early childhood. Again, a few people in terms of some of the research they've done. Let me bring this up here so you can see it better maybe. In the book, they talk about some of these researchers. Some of these names probably might be familiar a little bit. I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of detail on them, but John Locke, which you've probably heard of before, these guys, Locke and Rousseau, talk about the environment and have done research on the importance of the environment in early childhood learning, even though this was many, many years ago that they've done that. They talk about milestones. If you remember, in early childhood, milestones would mean that like walking is a milestone, talking is a milestone, those different things. So Darwin is probably one you've heard of a little bit more than Pestalozzi, which I have a hard time saying every time I see that. And then talking about the scientific method in terms of studying. Scientific method, is like trial and error kind of, right? So that's something that young children do as they grow and develop. They figure things out. Hall is the guru in that area there. So I'll spend a little bit of time on this. We talk about research in early childhood. So to figure things out and to understand things, you have to do research. Don't think of it as like a science experiment, but like studying children. Why do they do things the way they do, right? So here they talk about correlational research. Okay, so if we talk about correlational research, it's like why do things happen? Okay, do things happen? If we talk about variables here, is there a relationship between things? So examples, do infants who babble more have parents who talk to them more? So that's a correlational research, and the variable there is the babbling and then the parents who talk to them more. Okay, so you could do research on that. You might want to find that out. You get a group of babies or infants and you talk to their parents, right? Do you talk to them? Do you read to them, et cetera, et cetera? Okay. Same thing. Do children who like to build with blocks have better math skills? Well, you won't know that until they get a little bit older, right? And so a lot of things that you could study or look at in terms of variables, okay? Lots of things. So you could also do cross-sectional research. Okay, for example, children from 2 or more different age groups compared only once. Okay, so I'm going to take this one time and look at these kids, 5-year-olds and 4-year-olds, for example, and talk about their math skills or something. Okay, you do it once. So cross-sectional is one time. Longitudinal is a group of children compared 2 times or more. Okay, so you might look at them as 4-year-olds and then wait another year and look at them as 5-year-olds and see if something has changed. Okay, another way to do that. Experimental research is different, and I'm sure this is why I combine these two together. It's not like we're going to go do a bunch of research, but I just want to touch base on some of these things so that you can understand it. Okay. Experimental research talks about research causes something to occur, and then you measure the outcome. So, for example, does reading to children lead to more positive views of diversity? So you're going to do a study where maybe you or somebody is going to read to children. You're going to read a variety of books, maybe books on diversity, and then you're going to ask them, visit them, have them fill out a survey, something to see what their views of diversity are. Okay. The supplemental food in infancy affect cognitive development in preschool. Again, it's something that you're going to study over a period of time. Okay, so again, it can be cross-sectional, meaning that you do it with 2 different age groups, or it can be longitudinal, where you start it at one age and then you look at it again at a different age. Okay, so this is kind of like an experiment where you would, like a science experiment kind of thing. The multicultural critique of traditional research. So again, we talked about, I think I said this a little earlier, that often when research is done in early childhood, it's not a combination, or it's not a very good overview of all students, all cultures, all backgrounds. Okay, typically it's been the white or middle class families and children that have done that. Other type of research, then qualitative and ethnographic research. This type of research is usually very open-ended and is looking or observing or doing research on kids in their natural setting. Okay, so in ethnographic research typically means that you're very engaged in the community or where things are taking place. So an ethnographic researcher would probably take they would go and live somewhere for a period of time, a year, sometimes 2 years, and they might be studying, something, but they're there for that period of time, okay, which is quite long. So it really includes a large cultural context rather than just what's happening. So it's not like an experiment or experimental research where you're doing it quick, kind of. Ethnographic and qualitative research, you're really engaged in what's happening. Assessment of young children is something that is a little bit more difficult to do than assessment of like older children and in essence adults. But typically when we're assessing young children, we're looking at behavior, right? For the most part, and evaluating. That's what we can really understand, because sometimes we're evaluating an infant or assessing an infant, we can't really talk to them and see how they're feeling or are doing, right? We have to evaluate their behavior. Excuse me, why do we do assessment of young children? It goes back to this legislation that was enacted in 2002 and then updated and changed in 2015. We have to hold teachers, educators accountable for student learning and student growth and student development. Okay? I should say student learning, not necessarily growth and development, because growth and development, we don't necessarily have control over that, right? Student learning, we have some control over that. So, assessment has also led to a lot of different different ways we do things, right? So students with disabilities or special needs or individual needs, this response to intervention program started as something to help students with individual needs, okay, or with learning disabilities. And so it's a three-tiered evaluation process. So you start, for example, with everybody in a classroom, and you teach something, you go through a process, you try to have them learn something. If they struggle with it, then you go to tier 2, which means there's less students there. It's more focused one-on-one instruction. If they still don't understand it or they're still struggling with it, then you go to that tier 3, which is very intense, focused, maybe instruction, or maybe that leads to an IEP or some kind of modifications for that student. This is actually turned into something that a lot of schools use for reading and math. Okay? They split groups into they split students into 3 different groups, and they do a lot of teaching that way, right? So students that are not having issues understanding or learning maybe a lesson, then students that need a little bit extra help, and then students that need a lot of help into those three tiers. So, two things to finish up here. The difference between summative assessment and formative assessment. Summative assessment is an overall end of the semester, end of the unit, end of the chapter type assessment. Okay, and so it's something that you're going to do to see if students learned what you taught them, right? So typical final exam, mastery test, a big project, something like that. Okay, formative assessment then is something that we do while students are learning, and then we adjust our instructions or we help them with something if they're not understanding. Okay, so so this could be students' behavior, development over time. So it can be done a variety of ways. It just might be a simple question: do you understand this? Yes or no? Yep. It might be a thumbs up, thumbs down. It might be an activity you did in a class, and you notice that the child has no idea, what to do. Right. So with this formative assessment that you have to either help them do it differently, you have to re-explain it, whatever it is that we have to do. So, so those are, you'll hear summative and formative assessments a lot, so that you understand the difference between them, and we'll work on when we use them as well. So, okay, questions? There's a lot to kind of buzz through, but so just FYI then, for those of you watching this, chapters 1 and chapters 2, let me pull this up here, find the right class, 252, right? Yes. Chapters 1 and 2 due next Wednesday at midnight. So you got the whole week to do that, and then even next Wednesday, you got time to do that also. So. Okay, so don't forget that. I'm going to stop the recording. See you all next week.